Jack Carter never thought his first diplomatic mission to an alien empire would change his life forever. He was just a military engineer, chosen to represent Earth in peaceful talks with the Zyran Imperium, one of the most powerful alien empires in the galaxy. He was supposed to attend a grand feast, shake a few hands, if Zyran even had hands, and then return home. Simple, right? Wrong. The banquet hall was breathtaking. Massive pillars of glowing stone stretched high into the sky, and golden banners with ancient Zyran symbols hung from the ceiling. The scent of exotic spices filled the air as alien music played in the background. Jack was seated at the high table, right beside Queen Syra Valzerin, the ruler of the Zyran Imperium. She was tall, her deep violet skin glowing under the dim lights, her golden eyes sharp and unreadable. She barely spoke to him, and Jack figured she wasn't too happy about having the human guest of honor. Then came the ceremonial toast. A servant brought forward a massive silver goblet filled with a shimmering blue liquid. Jack watched as Queen Syra lifted her cup, the entire hall falling into a heavy silence. Not wanting to be rude, Jack picked up his goblet and followed her lead. She raised the cup to her lips, so he did the same. The drink was oddly sweet, with a burning aftertaste, but not unpleasant. As he placed the cup down, he noticed something strange. Syra was staring at him, her golden eyes wide with shock. The entire hall erupted in gasps. Murmurs filled the air. Some alien stood, looking at him like he had just committed a crime. Jack felt his stomach drop. Did I do something wrong? The queen clenched her jaw, her expression unreadable, but the tension in the room was impossible to ignore. Finally, one of the royal advisors, a tall blue-skinned alien, stepped forward. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of something dangerous beneath it. You have just performed the sacred bonding ritual with our queen." Jack blinked. "The what?" The advisor's eyes narrowed. "You married Queen Syra." Silence. Cold, heavy silence. Jack's heart nearly stopped. Married? How? He just took a sip of a drink. He turned to Syra, but she looked just as stunned as he was, her fingers tightening around her goblet. There must be a mistake," Jack stammered. "I didn't know. No one told me." "There is no mistake," the advisor cut in. "The ritual is clear. When a ruler and an outsider drink from the goblet of union, their souls are bound. The marriage is sealed." Jack could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. This was a disaster. The queen of an intergalactic empire had just been accidentally married to a human from Earth. Before Jack could say another word, the heavy doors of the banquet hall slammed open. A group of armored figures stormed inside, their black cloaks billowing behind them. Their faces were hidden behind sleek helmets, their glowing red visors scanning the room. The hall fell into dead silence. The Queen's royal guards instantly moved to form a protective barrier. But the intruders didn't hesitate. In a blur of motion, they pulled out energy blades and charged forward. Assassins. Jack didn't have time to think. His military instincts took over. He grabbed the heavy silver goblet from the table and hurled it at the nearest assassin's head. It smashed into his visor, sending him staggering backward. The queen leaped to her feet, drawing a curved energy dagger from her belt, her movements fluid and precise. Screams filled the banquet hall as guests scrambled for cover. The royal guards clashed with the assassins, energy weapons flashing in the dim light. One of the cloaked figures lunged at Jack, a blade slicing through the air toward his throat. Jack barely dodged in time, rolling over the table and grabbing a fallen guard's weapon. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but old habits died hard. The assassin swung again, but Jack ducked and drove his fist into the attacker's ribs, then slammed the hilt of his stolen blade into the side of the assassin's helmet. The enemy collapsed, but another took his place, forcing Jack to block a rapid series of strikes. From the corner of his eye, he saw Queen Syra fighting off 3 assassins at once. She moved like a force of nature, her blade slicing through the air in deadly arcs. But even she was outnumbered. One of the attackers was about to strike her from behind. Jack didn't think. He just moved. He tackled the assassin before the blade could land, both of them crashing onto the floor. The enemy struggled, but Jack twisted his arm at an unnatural angle, forcing the blade from his grip. With one last strike, Jack knocked the assassin unconscious. By the time he got back to his feet, the remaining assassins were retreating. Their mission failed. The royal guards didn't chase them. The damage was done. The hall was in chaos. Broken tables, fallen bodies, and the lingering hum of energy weapons. Jack turned to Exira. She was breathing hard, her golden eyes locked onto him, unreadable. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. The hall was still, all eyes watching as the Queen of the Zyran Imperium stopped in front of the human who had just saved her life. She didn't speak at first. Then her voice came, low and firm. "You fought well." Jack let out a breath. "Yeah, well, I had a good reason." He gestured around at the destruction. "I just got married, after all." The Queen's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, he swore he saw a flicker of amusement in her eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone. "This changes everything," she said. Jack had no idea how true those words were. He had just become king consort of the Zyran Imperium. And from the looks of the gathering nobles, some angry, some intrigued, his accidental marriage wasn't just a mistake. It was a declaration of war. Jack Carter never wanted to be a king. He was an engineer, a soldier, a man who fixed problems, not someone who ruled empires. But after the accidental marriage to Queen Syra, he had no choice. The moment he drank from that cursed goblet, his fate was sealed. The morning after the disastrous banquet, Jack woke up in a massive golden chamber, the royal palace of Zyra's prime. It took him a moment to remember where he was. The silky dark sheets, the high ceiling decorated with glowing blue symbols, the air filled with a strange but pleasant scent. It all felt too unreal. Then reality hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just on an alien planet. He was now the king consort of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. A soft chime rang, and the large doors slid open. A tall, blue-skinned alien with a sharp, angular face stepped inside. Jack recognized him from the banquet. His name was Lord Kale, the Queen's royal advisor. From the moment Jack had arrived, Kale had treated him like an unwanted pest. "You are expected in the War Council," Kale said, his voice cold and formal. Jack sat up, rubbing his face. "War Council? Why?" Kale's lips twitched in something close to irritation. "You are the king consort now. That means you have responsibilities. You may not like it, but you are bound to our queen. You are bound to us." Jack sighed. He didn't ask for this. He didn't even know if there was a way to undo it. But one thing was clear. He had no choice. The palace halls were a maze of towering pillars and glowing walls, Zyran guards standing at attention as Jack walked past. Some gave him strange looks, others bowed slightly, but most just watched him with suspicion. He could hear their whispers. "A human, married to the queen. He does not belong here. He is weak. He will not last long." Jack ignored them, keeping his face neutral. He had been in enough war zones to recognize what was happening. He was an outsider, an invader in their eyes. And if he wasn't careful, he wouldn't live long enough to prove them wrong. The War Council chamber was a massive circular room with a holographic map of the Zyran Imperium floating in the center. Queen Syra stood at the head of the room, wearing deep violet battle robes, her golden eyes scanning the gathered nobles and military leaders. The moment Jack entered, all eyes turned to him. He could feel the weight of their stares. He wasn't just a stranger here. He was a problem. Queen Syra's gaze barely lingered on him before she turned back to the map. "The Tarkan Dominion has declared war," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They see my union with an outsider as a sign of weakness." Jack's stomach twisted. He wasn't a politician, but even he could see what was happening. His accidental marriage had sparked a political crisis. The Tarkans were using it as an excuse to attack. Lord Kale stepped forward. The Tarkan Dominion has mobilized their fleets. They are already moving toward our border planets. We must prepare for war. The nobles around the room murmured in agreement. Some looked eager, others worried. Jack folded his arms, listening. He didn't know much about the Tarkans, but he had read their file before coming here. They were a brutal race, ruled by a warlike AI system. Their entire civilization built on conquest. They didn't negotiate. They didn't back down. They only destroyed. One of the Zyran generals, a towering figure in black armor, turned toward Jack with a sneer. "And what of the human? Will he fight?" Jack met his gaze, keeping his expression steady. "If I have to." Laughter rippled through the room. Some nobles smirked. Others openly scoffed. "You think you can fight against the Tarkans?" the general said, shaking his head. "Your kind is weak. Your Earth is nothing but a backwater world." Jack felt his fists clench, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had seen this kind of arrogance before, soldiers who underestimated their enemies, and he knew exactly how that kind of thinking got people killed. Before he could respond, Queen Syra spoke. "He will fight," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "If he is to be my king consort, he must prove himself." Jack turned to her in surprise. She wasn't looking at him, but he could see the challenge in her eyes. "Very well," Lord Kale said, nodding. "Then let the trial of combat begin." Jack frowned. "The what now?" Kale smirked. "A test, human. If you wish to stand beside our queen, you must earn your place. You must fight one of our greatest warriors." Jack exhaled slowly. Of course, there had to be some ancient warrior ritual. The war council ended soon after, and Jack was escorted to the royal training grounds, where a crowd had already gathered. The moment he stepped onto the combat floor, he saw his opponent. A massive Zyran warrior in full battle armor stood waiting, a heavy blade in his hands. His armor gleamed under the training lights, the markings on his chest signifying him as one of the Queen's elite guards. Jack didn't even know his name, but he already knew one thing. This guy was going to try to kill them. Queen Syra sat on a high throne overlooking the arena, her golden eyes watching. The moment she raised her hand, the warrior charged. Jack barely dodged in time, rolling to the side as the heavy blade slammed into the ground, sending sparks flying. He wasn't a swordsman. He wasn't built for brute force. But he had speed. He had strategy. His opponent swung again, but this time Jack sidestepped and slammed his fist into the warrior's side. It was like punching a steel wall. The Zyran warrior barely flinched before grabbing Jack and hurling him across the arena. Jack crashed hard, pain exploding through his ribs. The crowd roared in approval. He groaned, forcing himself up. He couldn't win this fight with strength. He had to outthink his opponent. The Zyran warrior charged again, his blade swinging down. But Jack was ready this time. He dodged left at the last second, causing the warrior to stumble forward. Before his opponent could recover, Jack lunged forward and slammed his knee into the warrior's head. The impact dented the warrior's helmet. The crowd fell silent. Jack didn't stop. He grabbed the warrior's arm, twisted it, and disarmed him in one smooth motion. Then he pressed the blade to the warrior's throat. Silence. Then a single voice spoke. Queen Syra. "Enough," she said. The ancient fleet responded. Weapons unlike anything in recorded history activated. Beams of light that bent space itself. Fields that temporarily suspended the laws of physics. The Council's mighty ships suddenly looked small and fragile. All Earth vessels, hold position. Sunlight ordered, recognizing that this battle had moved beyond their capabilities. Let's see what our ancestors left us. The first counterattack from the ancient fleet disabled 50 Council ships without destroying them. Their engines simply stopped, their weapons powered down, their crews left floating harmlessly in space. Tactical analysis impossible, her science officer reported, staring at his readings in disbelief. These ships, their technology, it's beyond our ability to understand. More council ships fell silent, their attacks proving useless against the ancient fleet's defenses. Sun Mai watched as 3,000 years of preserved human technology demonstrated exactly why the council had feared it so much. Council command, she broadcast, allowing herself a small smile. Perhaps we should discuss this situation more diplomatically. The battle wasn't over. The council still had ships in position, and pride would prevent them from surrendering easily. But as Sun Mai watched the ancient fleet protect itself with impossible technology, she understood what Admiral Kita had preserved for humanity. It wasn't just ships, it wasn't just weapons. It was proof that humanity had once reached heights that even the mighty Galactic Council couldn't match. And now, after 3,000 years of waiting, that legacy was awake and ready to defend itself. The stars watched silently as history changed course, as humanity's past rose to protect its future. Lieutenant Taiho's boots echoed on metal floors that hadn't felt human footsteps in 3,000 years. The boarding team had expected darkness, silence, maybe even decay. Instead, they found themselves in corridors that seemed to glow with inner light, surfaces unmarred by time. "This is impossible," he whispered, his hand trailing along a wall that felt warm to the touch. Behind him, his team moved carefully, their standard-issue weapons looking oddly primitive in these ancient halls. They had managed to dock with the lead vessel of the Heritage Fleet during the chaos of the battle. While the ancient ship's defensive systems handled the Council forces, a small window of opportunity had opened. Now they were inside, and everything they knew about their ancestors was being rewritten with each step. The corridor opened into what could only be the command center. As Taiho crossed the threshold, the room came alive. Holographic displays flickered into existence, filling the air with streams of data. Chairs rose from the floor, adjusting themselves to human proportions. Light panels shifted from dormant blue to active gold. Integration protocols initiated, a voice announced in perfect Korean, though the accent was unlike anything Taiho had ever heard. "Welcome, descendants." His team raised their weapons instinctively, but Taiho held up his hand. "Hold fire," he ordered, his eyes fixed on the holographic interface forming in front of him. The symbols were old, but he could read them. Ship status, weapon systems, defensive capabilities. "I am ARIA," the voice continued. "Advanced Responsive Intelligence Assistant, primary control system of the Guardian Fleet. You are the first human life forms to board this vessel in 3,000 years, 2 months, and 17 days. Taiho stepped forward, his heart pounding. "I'm Lieutenant Taiho of the Earth Defense Force. We're here because the Galactic Council attempts to destroy this fleet," ARIA interrupted. "Their attack patterns suggest minimal technological advancement since our time. Their weapons are quaint." A new hologram appeared, showing the battle outside. Council ships continued their futile assault while the ancient fleet's defenses held firm. Each impact against their shields seemed to make them stronger. "This ship houses technology beyond your current understanding," Ariad explained. "However, genetic markers confirm your status as descendants. Integration protocols are designed to bridge the gap between your current knowledge and our capabilities." Suddenly, information began flowing directly into Taiho's mind. He gasped as understanding bloomed. How the ships worked, why they were built this way, what they could do. The knowledge felt natural, as if he'd always known it, but had simply forgotten. "Neural interface active," Ariya announced, beginning full systems initialization. The command center transformed. Surfaces that had seemed solid became transparent, giving them a full view of space around the ship. Taiho could feel the vessel's systems responding to his thoughts, eager to serve after millennia of waiting. "Sir," one of his team members called out. "What's happening?" Taiho turned to them, his eyes glowing slightly from the neural interface. We're waking up. All of it. Everything our ancestors left for us. He could see it now. The true purpose of the fleet. Not just weapons and shields, but terraforming systems that could make dead worlds live. Medical technology that could cure any disease, repair any injury. Engines that could cross galaxies in days. The Council feared this, he realized, speaking both to his team and to Araya. They weren't afraid of our weapons. They were afraid of how far ahead of them we used to be. Correct, Araya confirmed. Your ancestors achieved levels of technology that your current allies cannot comprehend. They hid this fleet not out of weakness, but to allow younger races to develop naturally. Through the neural interface, Taiho accessed more of the ship's history. He saw the ancient enemy that had forced humanity to hide this fleet. He understood why Admiral Kita had chosen preservation over immediate victory. Full systems are now online, Araya announced. All ships in the fleet report ready status. Lieutenant Taiho, as ranking human officer present, you have command authority. The power at his disposal was staggering. With a thought, he could disable every Council ship in the sector. With another, he could send them all safely back to their homeworlds. The technology surrounding him didn't just surpass current capabilities. It operated on principles that modern science hadn't even discovered yet. Sir, his team waited for orders, watching as their lieutenant stood at the center of technology beyond their imagination. Taiho smiled, feeling the wisdom of his ancestors flowing through the neural interface. Contact Earth Command, he said. Tell them the fleet isn't just awake, it's ready. And then let's show the Council exactly why they should have asked permission before trying to destroy our heritage. Around them, the ancient vessel hummed with power, ready to remind the galaxy that humanity's past contained wonders that even their present had yet to dream of. The holographic command center aboard the ancient flagship, Guardian's Light, hummed with activity as General Minna stood before the assembled commanders. Her uniform, a blend of modern Earth Defense Force design and activated ancient tech, seemed to glow with its own inner light. We didn't start this war, she declared, her voice carrying to every ship in the combined fleet through neural interfaces. But we will finish it. Her eyes swept across the gathered officers, both those physically present and those attending via hologram. The Council gave us no choice. They tried to destroy our heritage. Now they'll learn why our ancestors were feared across the galaxy. Through the neural link, she could feel every ship in the fleet, 7,000 ancient vessels awakened from their long sleep, now joined by the 40 modern Earth ships that had come to their defense. The difference in technology was staggering, yet they worked together with perfect harmony. Battle plan is as follows. Minna continued, bringing up a tactical display that filled the chamber. The Council has gathered their main fleet at these coordinates. 2,000 ships, their best weapons, everything they could scramble on short notice. Lieutenant Taiho, now serving as her tactical officer, stepped forward. Their ships are arranged in traditional defensive formations. They're expecting us to attack head-on, trying to break through their lines. A smile crossed Minna's face. They don't understand what they're facing. Show them. The tactical display shifted, showing the true capabilities of the ancient fleet. Ships that could phase through solid matter. Weapons that could temporarily suspend the laws of physics in localized areas. Defensive systems that didn't just block attacks. They redirected the energy, making the fleet stronger. Our modern ships will take forward positions, Minna explained. The Council needs to see that humanity stands united, past and present. Ancient vessels will provide support and protection. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to show them why diplomacy was the wiser choice. The battle plan unfolded in 4 dimensions through the holographic display. Modern Earth ships would engage the Council fleet conventionally, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, the ancient ships would demonstrate their superiority in ways that left no room for doubt. All ships, battle stations, Minna ordered, launch in 5 minutes. As the commanders returned to their vessels, Minna felt the ancient ship's AI, Araya, connecting with her mind. Your strategy honors your ancestors, the AI observed. They too sought to end conflicts with minimal loss of life. The fleet moved out, a sight that would be remembered for generations. Modern Earth ships, their hulls gleaming with standard metals and alloys, flew in formation with vessels that seemed to bend light around them. The contrast was beautiful and terrifying. The Council fleet appeared ahead of them, their ships arranged in textbook defensive patterns, their weapons powered up, ready to face what they thought would be a conventional battle. All ships, execute battle plan Guardian, Minna commanded. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ancient vessels phased through Council ship shields as if they didn't exist, emerging inside their formations. Weapons fired that didn't destroy but simply disabled, leaving Council crews helpless but unharmed. Space itself seemed to fold and twist as the ancient fleet demonstrated technology that operated beyond current understanding. Modern Earth ships played their part perfectly, their conventional attacks forcing the Council fleet to divide their attention. The combination of familiar and impossible tactics threw the enemy into confusion. Council Command, this is General Minna. She broadcast on all frequencies. Your ships are being disabled. Your weapons cannot harm us. Surrender now, and let's discuss this situation like civilized beings. The response came in the form of more attacks. Energy weapons, missiles, exotic particles. The ancient fleet's defenses absorbed them all, growing stronger with each impact. It was exactly what Minna had expected. Very well, she said softly. Show them what we can really do. The ancient ships moved in perfect coordination, their systems operating on principles that modern science couldn't explain. Council ships found their weapons turning off, their engines shutting down, their communications going silent. Not through destruction or violence, but through technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. Within 20 minutes, the mighty Council fleet hung powerless in space. No lives lost, no ships destroyed. But the message was unmistakable. Humanity's past contained power that their present had only begun to understand. Minna stood in the command center, watching as the last Council ships fell silent. Send the message again, she ordered. Let's see if they're ready to talk now. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had reclaimed its heritage, and now they had to decide how to use it. As Minna looked out at the disabled Council fleet, she thought about Admiral Kita and the choice made 3,000 years ago. They had inherited not just power, but responsibility. The wisdom to know when to use it and when to hold back. That, perhaps, was the greatest gift their ancestors had left them. The ancient Council archives stretched deep beneath the surface of the galactic capital world, a maze of data crystals and holographic storage systems. Researcher Jaiho stood in the center of it all, his hands trembling as he held a crystal that contained the truth humanity had been seeking for 3,000 years. Play it again, he whispered to the archive system. The hologram flickered to life, showing a recording so old that its very existence was remarkable. The image showed a meeting chamber filled with beings from dozens of ancient species, and there, standing at the center, was Admiral Kita. The enemy is defeated, her recorded voice echoed through time. But victory has taught us something we cannot ignore. Our technology, our advancement. It's too much, too soon for this galaxy. Jaiho watched as the ancient council members listened, their expressions showing a mix of fear and respect. This wasn't the corrupt council of the present, but its predecessor from 3 millennia ago. We've made arrangements, Kita continued in the recording. Our fleet, our technology, our knowledge, all of it will be hidden. Not destroyed, not abandoned, but preserved. When the younger races are ready, when they've had the chance to develop on their own terms, they'll find what we've left for them. The truth hit Jaiho like a physical force. He activated his emergency communication link to Earth Command. Within minutes, he was speaking to a chamber full of Earth's highest-ranking officials through holographic projection. You need to see this, he began, his voice urgent. Our ancestors didn't hide the fleet because they were losing. They didn't do it out of fear or weakness. They did it to protect the younger races, including us, from themselves. He played the recording for them. The chamber fell silent as Admiral Kita's words crossed the centuries. "Think about it," Jai-Ho explained, pacing as he spoke. "Our ancestors had technology that made the current council look primitive. If they had stayed, if they had maintained their presence in the galaxy, what would have happened? Every other race would have either become dependent on human technology or been too intimidated to develop their own." The archives contain more records of debates, discussions about the ethical implications of advanced civilizations interacting with developing ones. Kita and her contemporaries had seen the future clearly. A galaxy where one species' advancement prevented others from reaching their full potential. Our ancestors knew that if they remained, their technology would stunt the growth of new civilizations. Jai-Ho continued, his words carrying the weight of revelation. They didn't abandon us. They gave us, and everyone else, a chance to grow on our own terms. The evidence was overwhelming. Charts showing how contact with ultra-advanced civilizations affected developing ones. Studies of species that had given up their own technological development in favor of trading for advanced tech. The pattern was clear. The current council's fear wasn't entirely wrong, Jai-Ho admitted, but they misunderstood the threat. Our ancestors' fleet isn't a weapon waiting to be used against them. It's a gift, waiting until all races in the galaxy were ready to share it. More recordings played, showing how carefully the ancient humans had planned their withdrawal. They had calculated exactly how long it would take for new civilizations to develop naturally. They had designed their hidden fleet to wait until the galaxy's species had reached a certain level of advancement on their own. Look at these specifications. Jai-Ho highlighted sections of technical data. The fleet's eye wasn't just programmed to preserve the ships. It was watching, waiting for signs that the galaxy's civilizations had developed enough independence and wisdom to handle the knowledge it contained. The implications were staggering. The Council's attempt to destroy the fleet hadn't just been an attack on human heritage. It had been an unwitting attempt to destroy a gift meant for all species. Our ancestors weren't warriors hiding their weapons, Jai-Ho concluded. They were teachers, preparing a lesson that could only be learned when students were ready. And now, thanks to the Council's attack, that lesson is being taught ahead of schedule. The Earth Command Chamber erupted in discussion. Some argued for immediately sharing this information with the Council. Others wanted to keep it secret, to maintain tactical advantage. "There's more," Jai-Ho said, holding up another data crystal. Instructions from Admiral Kita herself, meant for whoever found the fleet. A message about how this knowledge should be shared, how to help other races understand and adapt to it without overwhelming them. As he prepared to play this final recording, Jai-Ho thought about how history had come full circle. 3,000 years ago, humanity had been wise enough to step back and let others grow. Now they had the chance to help those others take their next steps forward. The ancient archives held countless more secrets waiting to be discovered. But this one truth changed everything. Humanity's greatest achievement hadn't been building the fleet. It had been choosing to hide it until the time was right. The orbital station New Horizon hung like a jewel against Earth's blue sphere, its crystalline structures reflecting sunlight in patterns that symbolized hope. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from 100 worlds gathered, their faces showing a mix of awe, fear, and curiosity. Ambassador Yun walked to the central podium, her steps measured and confident. Through the vast windows behind her, two fleets floated in perfect formation, the sleek shapes of modern Earth vessels alongside the impossible geometries of their ancient counterparts. The sight made many representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. 3,000 years ago, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Humanity made a choice. Today, we make another. She gestured to the assembled delegates, acknowledging their presence. The time of the Council's corruption is over. Not because we defeated them, but because we understand why our ancestors chose to hide their power in the first place. Holographic displays activated around the hall, showing images from the recovered archives. Admiral Kitez's face appeared, her ancient message playing for all to hear. We step back not in defeat, but in hope. Let the younger races find their own path to the stars. We offer partnership, not dominance, Yunhe continued, her words carrying the weight of millennia. Our ancestors left us this legacy not to rule, but to protect. Let us build something better together. The hall erupted in murmurs. A Centaurian delegate stood, his crystalline form catching the light. And why should we trust humans with such power? The old council may have been corrupt, but at least their corruption was limited by their technology. Yunhe smiled. Computer, display the activation protocols for the ancient fleet. The holograms shifted, showing complex code sequences. Our ancestors built safeguards into every ship. The fleet cannot be used for conquest or oppression. It will only activate to defend, to protect, to help others grow. More delegates rose, asking questions, expressing concerns. Yunhe answered each one with patience and clarity. She explained how the ancient fleet's technology could be shared safely, how its medical advances could save lives across the galaxy, how its environmental systems could restore dying worlds. Look at those ships, she said, pointing to the view behind her. The ancient and the modern, flying together. That's our future, not one species dominating others, but all of us growing together, learning from each other. The Arcturian representative, their bioluminescent form pulsing with thought patterns, spoke next. And what guarantees do we have that humans won't repeat the mistakes of the old council? The best guarantee possible, Yunhe replied. The wisdom of our ancestors, who understood that true power lies not in domination, but in helping others reach their potential. She activated one final hologram, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, showing thousands of worlds, millions of potential paths forward. This is what our ancestors protected. Not just humanity's future, but everyone's. They could have ruled the galaxy. Instead, they chose to give every species a chance to develop, to grow, to become what they were meant to be. The assembly hall grew quiet as understanding dawned. The ancient fleet wasn't a weapon to be feared, but a gift to be shared. Its technology wasn't meant to elevate one species above others, but to help all rise together. We propose a new beginning, Yoon had declared. A galactic assembly where all voices are heard, where technology is shared responsibly, where we help each other grow without forcing anyone down a path they haven't chosen. Outside, the combined fleet began to move, forming a new pattern, not a display of power, but a dance of cooperation. Modern ships weave between ancient ones, their movements telling a story of past and present united for a better future. The choice is yours, Yoonhe concluded. We can continue as separate species, fearful of each other's advancement, or we can move forward together, learning from humanity's past mistake of advancing too quickly and our ancestors' wisdom in stepping back to let others grow. One by one, the delegates stood, not in fear or submission, but in understanding. A new age was beginning, not one of dominance and corruption, but of partnership and growth. As the votes were cast and the new galactic assembly took shape, Yoonhe looked out at the combined fleet once more. Somewhere, she thought, Admiral Kita was smiling. Their ancestors' gift had finally been understood, and their wisdom would guide not just humanity, but all species toward a brighter future. The dawn of a new era had arrived, built on the foundation of a choice made 3,000 years ago, when humanity had been wise enough to step back and wait for the right moment to step forward again.